All right, all right. Welcome to a special edition of the Elite 100. Obviously, we got Jared here, and Jared, just so you know, I got half a dozen people that want the recording. Some people are traveling, and most of the group has actually seen the presentation, so they just want the recording for the updates, and quite a few of them already in. So I see we got Eric Glikson on the phone here, and I think a couple more joining. But so I don't think we need a big introduction because I know a lot of the group has seen you live and in person. So I'm just going to make you a host, and the biggest thing here is to get a good recording so we can get it out to the team. Cool. All right. I just made you host if you want to, give your background a little.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I feel like I'm one with this community. I really enjoyed the time that we shared in Miami, and we have some really cool updates. So from that event, it was a huge success. That was my first time meeting the group, first time sharing this opportunity with the group, and about $1 million was committed on the spot, which I more than appreciate. I understand that investment is partially a belief in me. It's partially a belief in this project, but it's ultimately a belief in entrepreneurship, because that's really what the investment is. It's investing in infrastructure to support early stage entrepreneurs, because every member of Elite at one point in time was an early stage entrepreneur. And you realize that what has allowed you to mature is most likely a relationship, a mentor, or like someone that gave you a shot. And that's what I look at this investment opportunity as. It's your opportunity to give someone a shot. And that someone is not one person, it's potentially thousands and thousands of people over time. Since we've met, we've had some really significant things take place from a fundraising perspective. And I'm excited to share them, because if we already have $1 million committed with what I shared, it might actually lead to more money, because it's a really big update, which I shared with Brian the other day. And he's like, you got to share this with the group. This is a really big deal. But for those that don't know me, because you weren't at the event and don't know the opportunity, I'm going to spend about 15 to 20 minutes giving a little bit of background on myself, and then just walking through what Project 10K is, so that you can understand the opportunity and why so many people are so excited about what we're doing. And then at the end, I'll share the update. And then Brian, if there's certain questions you want to ask me on behalf of the group, please feel free. So a little bit about me, if we have yet to meet. I'm a non-technical tech founder that somehow found a way to do everything that they could conceivably do wrong while building a B2B SaaS platform. But I landed on my feet, and the company is pretty successful today. But I am the poster example of what you don't do. And that started when I outsourced software development a number of years ago to a firm in Boston that came highly recommended to me. They had a great reputation and track record. And they told me that it would take 10 months and $750,000 to build the first version of my vision. And my challenge at that time is I was pretty young and I had quite a bit of capital, because I had an exit right when I graduated college. So I figured, why not just self-fund this thing? So the 10 months and 750 grand turned into over 2 years and over $2 million. And at the point of launch, I learned a term I never heard before.
You're going to bang out all of them in a row.
Nope. Let me mute that. There we go.
Oh, cool. I think we're good. Yeah, awesome. So at the point of launch, I learned a term that I never heard before. Now I'll never forget, which is technical debt. And what that means is the engineers have cut so many corners, it's inevitable your platform will implode. The question just comes down to when. And my when was pretty much at launch. So I was left making this critical decision. Do I abandon the vision, or do I abandon 2 years and $2 million and start over? And I couldn't fathom abandoning the vision, because I so knew there was a need in the market for the solution. But at the same time, I didn't want to burn my hand on the stove for a second time. So I did this exercise with myself where I said, okay, I don't want to be cynical or skeptical. So let me pretend like I never did it, but I had the wisdom as if I did. What would I do differently? And what I realized really is the reason we are here today with Project 10K is that you cannot outsource software development at that early stage. It is just so difficult to find the right people that are going to align with the mission, that are not going to see it as a transaction, because what you need is a committed group to the outcome and do whatever it takes to get to that outcome. So I realized I had to build my own team in order to create safety for this vision and ultimately launch a secure solution. So I ended up hiring a really strong CTO. That CTO had a track record of building team. I met him when he was living in New York, but he used to live in India. So we started building our own team of engineers in the US, in Canada, and also in India. And that was really my catalytic moment for that first B2B SaaS company, which is called Synduit. It's a marketing software for small business owners. And between 2017 and today, we've grown that business to tens of thousands of paying users across 30 different industries. And it's a great story. I never raised any money. I came as close as you could possibly come to hitting rock bottom, but I made it. And what's cool about the story, though, is what happened about 2 years ago. because I woke up one day and I realized I'm officially obsolete at Synduit. And as everybody in this group knows, that's like the entrepreneur's dream. So I was really excited about the milestone. I was just questioning, what was I going to do next? I was 35 years old at the time, 2 young children, happily married, a wonderful lifestyle. And I realized for me, the next chapter, it had to be my moonshot. I had to do something that was just going to shake up the world, or I was going to go down trying. And as I started digging deeper into that, I had one of those calling moments that I'm sure most of you have had in this group. And the calling for me was really loud. And it was, do what you just did at Synduit, but do it 10,000 more times. And my immediate reaction was, that sounds crazy. Like, what does that even mean? But one thing that I know is you never negotiate against your calling. You either do it or you don't do it. And the thought of helping 10,000 people like who I once was so inspiring to me. 10,000 people that had tech ideas that wouldn't necessarily know where to go. So either they wouldn't start or they would, but most likely they would land in Bermuda Triangle, because that's traditionally where the non-technical tech founder lands as they had tried to pursue their vision. So I said, okay, if I can help them go from where they are to where they want to be safely and effectively, then take them on a journey for scale and for exit, I think we could really change the world, because there's so many great ideas that reside in the graveyard simply because there's no one to steward them. There's no infrastructure, there's no support. So in about a little less than 2 years ago, I approached my CTO from Synduit and my director of operations, and I shared this vision with them. I said, let's build a tech ecosystem, a safe place where entrepreneurs can come to pitch their tech ideas that reside on a napkin, the concept phase, because that's where everything begins. All of your businesses were once an idea. And I wanted to create a place for those early stage entrepreneurs to go. And when they would pitch us, there'd be 4 major things that we would look for: the right person with the right idea, in the right market, and the right business model. And when those 4 things are present, we would co-found a company with the entrepreneur. We both take equity in the company, so our values are perfectly aligned. And then we would build the entire company at cost. And that's everything from product management to software development to business development to sales to customer support to legal to bookkeeping, investor relations, everything. And about 97% of the initial costs for what we call the minimum viable company, because we don't launch products, we launch companies, is at cost in India in a company that I've owned since the end of 2017. So the risk is low and the cost is extremely low. So a little less than 2 years ago, we launched Project 10K, which is committed to building, scaling, and selling 10,000 tech companies while ensuring, and this is the key, and this is why I'm so excited about this group, because I've had a chance to speak with many of you one-on-one since my time in Miami. The key is that every entrepreneur that we say yes to has the support, the infrastructure, what we call the unfair advantages to achieve product market fit quickly. And we define that as a business that is doing $10,000 of monthly recurring revenue, which is not that much money, but in the space of early stage tech, it's kind of everything. Because at that point, you can attract investors and advisors, strategic alliances, etc. So before I share how far we've come in such a short period of time, what I want to introduce to you is something that I realized as we began this project a little less than 2 years ago. And what I've realized is there's no home for ideas. And many of you may fall into that bucket, and you're a really successful group, but there's really no home for ideas because venture capitalists are going to say they're too unproven. They're not going to put capital into an idea. And angel investors are going to say, no, ideas are just too needy. It's my $25,000 investment's not going to produce anything. It's just too needy. And incubators are going to say, no, it's just too early. I can't incubate a concept. And then accelerators are going to say, no, it's too resource intensive. We just want to train you and have you go and do it. But most likely that entrepreneur is not going to know where to go with it when it is a tech idea. And then most software development firms, they will say no to the early stage idea because it's just too unknown. Like it's just too unknown. They don't necessarily know if the entrepreneur doesn't have enough resources to really support that vision. So there's this big gap in the market right now. And the best solution prior to Project 10K, and the thing that we most closely align with, is called a venture studio. And you may have heard of this before. There's only a couple hundred venture studios around the entire world. So it's really still in its infancy. But one of the challenges with venture studios is they only look for unicorns. And when you look for a unicorn, what you overlook are thousands of singles and doubles. Singles and doubles change the individual entrepreneur's life, and the aggregate of those is worth hundreds or thousands of unicorns, just with less risk because it's diversified. Most venture studios also only launch anywhere from 1 to 4 companies a year at a maximum. They also focus on internal ideas. So they don't crowdsource, they do their own market research and they identify the things that they stand to solve. Most venture studios, because they've actually partnered with us, are really strong on the product side, but they're weak where the rubber meets the road, the business development side, because the only way you can validate anything is to put it out into the market and start generating cash flow. In addition, most venture studios, they don't have shared services. So as a byproduct, it's really expensive. Every individual company costs a ton of money to even bring to the market and to validate. They also have a really long development roadmap. It takes anywhere from 12 to 18 to 24 months traditionally to launch a solution within a venture studio. They also lack an ecosystem. And when you lack an ecosystem, what happens is every individual entrepreneur, for the most part, they're on an island by themselves, trying to figure out everything by themselves. Yes, they have some stewardship from the studio, but it's still a pretty isolating journey. And a whole variety of other things just don't exist in the venture studio model. And what's interesting about the studio is it's really in its infancy. I mean, worldwide, there's only 700 studios, like in the entire world. And in the US, there's only a few hundred of them, but there's expected to be extreme growth in the studio model, that over the next 10 years, there's expected to be 3,000 studios. And we expect to actually cause that. And I'll speak into what that means in a bit. I know this was one of the things that really excited many of the members of Elite, was the chance to kind of create the present and the future of the venture studio model. In addition, there's a ton of capital beginning to flow into studios. Over $100 billion in funding is supposed to be immersed into the studio model because it is a better path. We've just created a more efficient way to run a venture studio. So these are the current options that exist within the world of early stage SaaS. So one option is that the entrepreneur goes out and they hire an agency. That could be a software development firm or a marketing agency. And one of the challenges there is that they don't offer anything other than the delivery of the product. So then as a result of that, the entrepreneur needs to go out and kind of like piece together all of the other things that are essential to building, scaling, and eventually selling a business. There's also an incubator, and incubators are great, but they don't offer any marketing or product support. That's just not what they stand to do. It's more of a training program with an element of community and then potentially access to capital. Accelerators are also wonderful if you only want training and a sense of community, but they don't build anything. There's no infrastructure that exists. Venture capital is amazing if what you need is capital with some mentorship. What if you need an engineer or a product manager? What if you need a business development team or an operations team? That's just not what the venture fund does. And then there's the studio, which until now was the best path, but still with no shared services, no community, no coaching, no training, there's a major gap for that early stage entrepreneur, which is where Project 10K comes in. And the whole motivation of this project is to create a safe place for entrepreneurs to pursue their tech dreams, a safe place for those early stage ideas, which have the potential to become something more mature, can actually start their journey and begin to scale and then go for an exit as well. And we believe that we are seizing one of the largest markets that exists in entrepreneurship by creating a home for SaaS ideas. The home for SaaS ideas. This is one of the reasons why we have so much attention right now. And we've partnered with incubators and accelerators and business schools because we've created a home for the idea entrepreneur, which they currently can't support. And the reason why the model works is the first and foremost, we control all the variables. So within Project 10K, we have the operations team, and the product team, and the software development team, and the marketing team, and the legal and the bookkeeping, and the business development. I know many of you are active investors. And when you're investing in a company, you're looking at all of those things before you make a decision. Well, what's unique about the model is we are all of those things. We are the infrastructure for these businesses. So when anyone does due diligence, as long as they believe that we have the right infrastructure, which investors do at scale at this stage, it makes it a lot easier to want to support these individual companies. We also leverage no-code and low-code technology. This allows us to validate ideas quickly. We are able to launch companies within 60 to 90 days for anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000, slightly more if it's a more complicated solution. So we're able to truly test that these concepts have merit and they're viable in the market very quickly. We've also built what we call our business operating system. This is the most valuable thing that we offer at Project 10K. This is what we've made the most investment into. It's a predictable and linear path that every entrepreneur can travel to reduce their risk, increase their chance of product market fit, and then ultimately scale and exit. And we'll speak more about this in a bit. We've also immersed ourselves for quite some time in the world of artificial intelligence. I'm sure this group is pretty active with ChatGPT. It's an amazing solution. There's other solutions as well out there. By leveraging AI, it allows us to reduce risk for every individual company that we support, because ChatGPT, as an example, is the perfect first draft. So if you think about marketing, when you write your sales copy for the first time, the first draft takes the longest because you're staring at a blank sheet of paper. With ChatGPT, we're able to get the first draft done in minutes versus dozens of hours, saving time, reducing cost, and then reducing risk for every individual company within our portfolio. We also focus on having co-founders that have an expertise in their space. Our co-founders are people that are coming from industry. They've seen inefficiencies within that industry. They have a solution to that inefficiency. They just are traditionally non-technical, but they have the knowledge, the relationships, and the wherewithal to really bring an idea to the market. Very different than any other venture studio in the world. We also take full responsibility for business development, and I'll speak into a breakthrough that's happened since we met in Miami in a bit. We own anywhere from 25 to 50% equity in every business. Every business starts the same way, though. We have 50%, the entrepreneur is 50%, and then we have different ways that the entrepreneur can earn more equity as long as we see they have the chops to be a co-founder. We want to make sure they have those skills that are required for the success of the business. And then finally, we're not looking for unicorns. When every time you look for a unicorn, you overlook hundreds, if not even thousands, of singles and doubles. And if you aggregate the singles and doubles, it's worth way more than a unicorn with a lot less risk. And you can start creating liquidity events way faster because unicorns just take time. Those are Titanics. It takes a long time to get there. And in 2022, without any distributions from any of our portfolio companies, it's just too early for them to distribute capital, we already had over $5 million of top line revenue and just service revenue alone. We're already cash flow positive. I'll speak into how in a bit. This is a breakthrough. I've spoken now with dozens of venture studios. Every one of them are burning cash. We've built a viable business model that allows us to offset our operating expenses through service revenue so that when we have distributions and exits, it's pure profit for all of our shareholders as well. The opportunity is huge. Right now, there was a study that came out recently from the IDC, which said that within the next few years, there'll be 750 million new applications leveraging no code and low code that will be launched. I thought the number was crazy. I went deeper into it, but these are the stats that have showed up. A large percentage of these will be within corporations, but many of them will be productized and brought to the market. This is a huge opportunity for Project 10K to play a major role in the scaling of SaaS solutions, leveraging both no-code and low-code technology. So I want to walk through this process. I shared this with a few people from Elite since the event, just so everybody understands the actual flow. How does this work? Like, where are ideas coming from? Once they enter the process, what does that even mean in the first place? So the first thing we do is we've created an unlimited idea flow. And these ideas are coming from all different partnerships. So some of these partnerships are people like Martin Tobias or Kevin Harrington or Dave Meltzer or Susan Sly. Others are ecosystems like Jeff Hoffman or Matt Andrews or New Chip Accelerator, and even business schools. What we've done is we've gone out to tech incubators, accelerators, influencers, and business schools. And we said to them, do you stand to give entrepreneurs a second chance? And every one of these different groups said, of course we do. So let's use tech incubators and accelerators as an example. We said, if you stand to give entrepreneurs a second chance, then send every entrepreneur that you're saying no to through our process. Give us a chance to say yes to your no. And if we say yes to your no, we'll give you 1% equity in that business, $1,500, and then we'll mature the business so they can then reapply into your program when the time is right for them. And guess what happened? Every incubator and accelerator said, here's all of our no's. It's a really exciting outcome because that is our business development. That's where ideas flow from. Now, as they flow through, we are building a really unique solution right now, and I'm excited to have certain members of this group participate in this. Many of you have expressed interest, but we're building something called the idea quotient. The idea quotient is a mechanism for us to remove bias from our decision-making process and to open top of the funnel so that we can review more ideas. What this is an assessment that allows us to verify the viability of an idea. It merges together four key areas for us: a personality assessment, meets an idea assessment, meets a market assessment, meets a business model assessment, and it generates a score. The score is between 0 and 100. If the entrepreneur gets over an 85, they're automatically greenlit into what we call co-foundership. If it's between 70 and 85, they enter a platform that we're building in parallel to the idea quotient, which is kind of like the Tinder of ideas, where people can vote on the things that they believe in. And if they get enough votes, it could increase their score accordingly. And if it's under a 70, we have a free training that we provide them with to help them just revamp their idea because it just isn't viable in the first place. Once they're green lit, they then enter what we call rapid validation. This is what's really unique. Traditionally, in early stage tech, what happens is a prototype is built, a development is done, then there's marketing, and then there's scale. And I define that as risk. What we do is we have marketing influence product. We will market before we build anything, just to ensure there's even a market that wants what we're going to build. That could look like surveys, and it could even look like pre-sale activities as well. Once the market says you're onto something, then we build a prototype. We develop it leveraging both no-code and low-code technology, and then we go for scale. And when we go for scale, our outcome is to have an exit for each of these businesses within 18 to 24 to 36 months, depending on the market that they're entering. Now, how do we scale? Well, we take the responsibility for growth at scale. We have built a very impressive and valuable business development unit. One of the breakthroughs that's transpired since our time in Miami is we got accepted into a data co-op that has almost 300 million records. And this data is enriched data. It costs a lot of money to be in the co-op, and it's really hard to get in. You can't just buy your way in. You have to have a very unique use case for the data. And it's easy to get kicked out if you violate anything based on their rules of engagement. So no one violates anything because it's so valuably part of this group. But because we're in this group now, we're able to pull all data besides our HIPAA data, which allows us to really support these early stage companies. We help each of our co-founders define what we call their ICP, the ideal customer profile. And once we know who that is, we extract data. We set up automation to schedule high quality sales meetings for each of our co-founders, and we train them on how to sell through one-on-one calls. This is a really important time frame for early stage tech companies because they're able to identify what motivates the decision. And the sales meetings that we're establishing for our companies is under $50 per meeting, some under $10 per meeting. That's a breakthrough. If you ever outsourced SDRs, so people setting up sales calls for you, traditionally it's about $500 per meeting. We're getting it down to under $50 per meeting. And we're really focused on getting the number even lower as we really refine our processes as well. Now, as we set up these sales meetings, every one of our companies is traveling what we call our KPI roadmap. There's a fanatical focus. Every business needs to hit $10,000 of monthly recurring revenue within 6 months of launch. It's not a ton of revenue, but what it does represent is validation. Based on hitting that milestone, they're now on the journey. And I know this is a smaller slide. We'll share this so everybody can see it. But at each of these milestones, it unlocks additional services for us to support these early stage companies. Our outcome is that we launch, let's just say 100 companies. There'll be thousands over time, but use 100 for an easy number. 40% of those companies will generate cash flow. So we're not even being unrealistic and saying, oh, 100% will. We're saying 40% will. That's our outcome. We're already seeing that happen today. Now, one of the questions many of you had is, how am I going to know how things are doing? I want to be able to help these companies. We're building out a very unique dashboard platform this year that allows for radical financial transparency. So in real time, you can see both Project 10K data, but also individual portfolio company data. So if an individual company is lagging for some reason, in real time, we will all know and be able to support that early stage entrepreneur on their roadmap for scale and then ultimately for exit as well. But the ultimate difference maker, what we call the unfair advantage, is the fact that we're an ecosystem. This is the unfair advantage. We have this mantra, which is together we achieve more. And that's already has transpired even in this early stage of the project, where companies that have the same end users are collaborating with those users. Their investors are being shared. Strategic alliances are being shared. What we say is the win for one is the win for all. To me, this is the greatest disruption that we've created. When you become an entrepreneur, the first thing you do is go to an island by yourself, and you're told to figure out everything by yourself. When you're part of an ecosystem, you get the support of those around you. That's what we've built. That's what you're investing in, an ecosystem to create a safe place for early stage entrepreneurs to realize their dreams. And one of the biggest breakthroughs for us is how operationally efficient we've become. And the way we've gotten there is through what we call vertically integrated pods. A pod is comprised of just a few people, the marketing manager, the product manager, and the co-founder. And a pod can handle between 8 to 12 companies. And there's a manager that actually oversees the pod. That's a pod that's focused on those 8 to 12 companies. Now, we also have what we call vertically integrated shared services. These are business units. For example, graphic design, copywriting, operations, business development, software development. This is how we remain operationally efficient for every individual company. We are very capital conscious to these early stage companies. This is the model that allows us to reduce cost for each one of these early stage companies. Now, one of the most common questions that we heard as a result of the group, when I spoke to people one-on-one afterwards, is how are you going to scale? We love this, we're in, but how do we scale this? How do you serve thousands and then tens of thousands of entrepreneurs over the course of time? And the way we do it is through licensing. This year, we are focused on what we call baking our operating system. It's pretty tight, but we want to go really granular to ensure that starting next year, we can begin to license out our infrastructure to business schools, tech incubators and accelerators, and successful people that want to run their own venture studio, but they don't want to build the infrastructure to run their own venture studio. It's almost like franchising the venture studio model. I'm part of the two different member organizations in the venture studio industry, and they said this is the greatest disruption you can cause, because right now, the venture studio industry is really fragmented. There's maybe a few hundred of them, like I showed you, and most aren't even doing it. They're just calling themselves that from a marketing perspective. When we create the license, it standardizes the industry. So here's what the model looks like. We're committed to co-founding 2 companies a month for the next 10 years. Only 2 companies a month for the next 10 years. But starting next year in 2024, we're opening up 1 license every month for the next 9 years. And each of those licenses will open up 2 companies each. If we hit those very basic milestones, we will have over 12,000 companies in 10 years. And we're not in a rush. If it took 20 years, so be it. But imagine that. By us focusing on 2 really high quality entrepreneurs with wonderful ideas, and then allowing us to license this model out to only 100 licensees over the next 10 years, 12,000 total companies. All of a sudden, these big numbers seem really attainable because there's so many quote unquote franchises out there with over 100 locations. And if each location is just responsible to get 2 companies a month with our support, now all of a sudden the volume becomes significantly easier based on the business operating system that we've built. And we have many companies already, and these are wonderful companies, from Lealzy to Utility Ranger, Meerkat Village, Skipit, Tipperosity, which just secured a huge meeting with Choice Hotels, or Rift, which is currently working with a national broker to secure a relationship. These are just some of the companies that are in our portfolio right now that you'll have a chance to meet and potentially support through your wisdom or your relationships as well. So in closing, I just want to I'll close this out and I'll share some of the updates with you. What we always tell our investors is service revenue makes the business profitable, but distributions and exits are what create wealth. When I talked about this before, I said most venture studios are just burning cash. Like they are just losing money month after month after month. And pretty much in our first year, we did over $5 million of top line revenue, and we're already profitable. It's literally a breakthrough in the venture studio model. And here's why. We have 3 streams of revenue that flow through Project 10K. And for you as a shareholder, this should matter to you. The first stream is what we call service revenue. When we co-found a company with an entrepreneur, it's anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000 to $75,000 that entrepreneur is responsible to invest. Coming with an idea is not enough, because the moment the going gets tough, they're going to bounce. They have to have some capital. So we have lending partners to support them, but they have to have some skin in the game. So let's just say on average, it's $75,000 per company. We have a little bit of margin built into that so that the actual operating company, which is Project 10K, is whole and stable. Now, we are confident that 40% of our companies will generate cash flow. I personally think it'll be higher, but we're just using that number as the current forecast. Once they generate cash flow and they achieve 18 months post-launch, each company is required to pay out distribution. On average, we are confident that distribution will be about $120,000 per year. So 40% of the companies that we start working with are going to pay out distributions of $120,000 per year, about $10,000 a month, very conservative estimates. From there, we believe that 40% of those companies will exit within 3 years at a $10 million valuation. Also, a really small exit in B2B SaaS. So we're just using this for the purpose of building a model for you so that you can see what's possible. Because a B2B SaaS exit, as an example, that sells for $10 million top line is going to only generate about $1 million to $1.5 million top line revenue. So it's a really small SaaS company in order to achieve that outcome. And we're not going to stop there. We're just giving you this as an example. Why this should excite you is our business is profitable just based on the service revenue alone. The distributions and the exit, stage 2 and stage 3, that's just profit that flows through to all shareholders. So let's use a basic example so that you can see. We already have dozens and dozens of companies in the portfolio just in our first year, thousands and thousands in the years to come. And let's just pretend, though, that we have 100 companies today. Well, of 100 companies today, 40 of those companies are going to pay an average annual dividend of $120,000 per year. And then of those 40, 40% of those will have an exit for $10 million. So at 100 companies over 5 years, let's just say, those 100 companies will lead to $92 million of dividends paid out to all shareholders. And that's just 100 companies. We've built a model that scales limitlessly. And remember, we don't put any capital into any of those companies. So we have zero basis in those companies, which means the ROI is infinite. But what allows the ROI to take place is that we are the infrastructure. Up until this point, for the most part, I self-funded this company, besides for inviting a few people to join us. One of which is Andrew Sandler, who's been a dear friend for many years. He runs a very large hedge fund in New York City. Michael Pecoraro has been a friend and actually a workout partner for about 15 years. He was the former CIO of JP Morgan Chase, and now he works for a very large hedge fund as well. Rodrigo Rubiano is the president of an S&P 500 company and also an MIT graduate. Those three I've known for years. Grant Cardone, I did not know until about 16 months ago. He actually reached out to me randomly one day. He said, I heard you're either crazy or onto something, but I want to support you. We ended up meeting. We really hit it off. And then he made an investment as well. He really believes in the impact that Project 10K is causing. So the use of funds, so everybody is clear, and then I'll share the update from a fundraising perspective. We are fanatically focused on top grading team. We've built a model. It works. It can scale. Now we need more executive talent. So we've already we're hiring a CMO as we speak. In 48 hours, we had 272 applicants for our CMO position. It's a really cool opportunity. So we're obviously getting great applicants. We're also going to create offshore production centers in the Philippines and in South America. We're going to refine our operating system so that we can begin to license it out next year. And we have a very unique use case for artificial intelligence that we're going to invest in as well. And obviously just working capital. But here's the breakthrough. When we were in Miami, about $1 million was committed from members of Elite, and I'm just honored by that. Once again, I know that's partially a belief in me, partially a belief in the project, and it's partially your desire to help entrepreneurs. Now, one of the things that has happened is when we started fundraising about a month ago, I hired a firm to value Project 10K. It's a hard business to value because we have 100 holdings. Each of those holdings has a valuation associated with it based on what they fundraised at or the cash flow they're generating. Each of those holdings has a trajectory for scale and for exit. It's just an animal. How do you actually value this? Like, there's nothing to compare ourselves against. So I hired a firm and they came back with 3 different valuations. There was best case, which meant that every single thing we touched turned to gold. There was worst case, which meant that almost everything failed. And then there was our middle case scenario. So we went with the middle case scenario, which is a $200 million valuation. And it's completely fair. We have all the data to support it. But one of the things that I've realized is that there is no reason to create additional pressure for yourself when you're already in a high stakes environment like Project 10K. We've got a lot of responsibility here. And that valuation for me, it didn't sit well for one specific reason. Whenever I have fundraised in the past, one thing I've done really well is get their investors' money back pretty quickly. And I've done really well at that. And I'm really proud of the fact that I've been able to make people whole pretty quickly, because then everything's gravy, right? Like, once you're whole, you're good. So I started doing the math. I'm like, how do I get people back their money really quickly? And the only way to do that would be to create liquidity of $400 million through the current portfolio. Because remember, we have 50% equity in each company. So you have to create liquidity of $400 million so that Project 10K gets $200 million, and then we can make every one of you whole. And I was picturing next year having a $50 million distribution, which would be amazing in like our second year to have that level of a distribution, and still having some investors that were like, what's taking so long? I don't even want to have that conversation. To me, investors are part of the project, they're part of the family. I wanted to create a way to make them whole quicker, but my team wasn't on board. They're like, Jared, we're not changing the valuation. That's the only way to do that. Build a case if you think this is worthwhile. So I did. And there's three things that have transpired recently that has helped the team see the world through my perspective. The first is the tech industry, the valuations in the industry have been suppressed a bit. I'm sure you're seeing this. It's somewhat artificial. It's based on the economy, and it will go back up. But right now, what was once a 10 to 12x multiple on top line revenue is now a 5 to 7x multiple on top line revenue. So our pro forma needed to be revised as a result of just what's going on in the world, because if in the next 2 to 3 years, one of the SaaS companies sells, and many of them will, it most likely will not get the 10 to 12x, but instead it'll get the 5 to 7x. The second thing is I did a workshop with my team on the recycling of capital. And what that means is, let's pretend you put in $100,000, because most of the people from Elite put in $100,000. Well, the moment we get you back your $100,000, most likely you're just going to recycle it. And you're going to take that $100,000 and invest it in 1 or 2 or 3 of the individual portfolio companies that you believe in. So we recycle capital. So I wanted to create an environment where we could recycle capital faster so that we could help our portfolio companies become well capitalized. But the final thing is what really helped the team see the world through my perspective. And what that is I've been coaching the CTO of Project 10K for the past few months. And about, maybe 2-ish weeks ago, I asked him this question. I said to him, Monty, if you had it all your way, what does your career look like from this point going forward? And he said, if I had it all my way, I would focus on one thing versus many things. And as all of you know, we're in the many things business at Project 10K. So I said, okay, if you were to focus on one thing, what would that one thing be? And he said, Synduit, which is my first B2B SaaS company. I still own it. I just don't operate it. I said, okay, well, I don't want to stand between where you are and where you want to be. So how about we do this? How about you go back to Synduit, and I'll give you some extra equity at Synduit, and let's do an equity swap, and you give me back the Project 10K equity that I gave you. How does that sound? And he said, it sounds like a really good deal. So that's what we did. And as a result, I personally own about 90% of Project 10K at this point, because I haven't fundraised yet. So it makes sense, but that's just too much responsibility, too much equity. So I've decided to just sell founder shares. So none of our current investors get diluted. And as a result, I can lower the valuation on this round, which makes me feel more comfortable because it gives us a chance to get all of you whole even faster. So it's an exciting opportunity. Most of you that have already said yes, you said yes to $100,000. And now for that same investment, you actually just get more equity in the portfolio. So what we're doing is we're raising a total of $9 million. The convertible note is now at a $60 million valuation cap, 24-month maturity, 7% annual interest rate. We already have over 4 million committed up to this point. So there's only under 200 spots that remain. Each spot is $25,000 each, and you can get one spot up to 10 spots. This is an opportunity for people to invest, not institutions, because I know that people care about people. I'm not as certain that institutions care about people. So this is an opportunity for more people to get involved in the project. And outside of your investment, whether you take 1 spot or 4 spots or 10 spots, whatever the amount that feels right to you, what's really cool about this is that you're getting behind the scenes of Project 10K. You're part of our community. And what that means for you is that you get the first chance to see every company. So if you can help them through your relationship capital or your wisdom, we compensate you through either cash or additional equity from that individual portfolio company. Whenever an individual company goes out to fundraise, the first people that find out are our shareholders, you, so that you have the chance to invest in any individual deal if you want to, with preferential terms. In addition, this is a community. We're going to do a lot of cool events together and experiences together, so you also benefit from the relationship capital that you meet within the Project 10K ecosystem. So what you said yes to was a $200 million valuation. We're now bringing it down to $60 million. We're raising $9 million. Right now, close to $5 million is already committed, which is very exciting. And we have $4 million left. I know it's going to fly. And the reason it's going to fly is your investment is into our operating company. And that's a really big deal because we're not a fund. There's no management fees. There's no performance fees. We also have 100 plus holdings today with thousands in the years to come, and we don't invest money into any individual company. We invest our resources, but not capital. So your investment is into our infrastructure to support thousands of companies over the period of time. And we're not going to cap the number of companies that you're invested in. You're invested in our operating company, which allows us to diversify and to really serve more entrepreneurs at large. So for those of you that have already said, yes, I'm in, if you want to change the amount that you said yes to, this is how you do it. You can either scan that QR code or you can just text 877-822-0926 with the term Elite 100, and then just put in the amount that you want to change. If you have not committed anything yet, just go through the prompts that the texting will offer you. We have all the investor documents at this point. We're going to start circulating them on Monday of next week. And it's kind of a first come, first serve basis. So we just want to fill this round with really good people, but we want to fill this round quickly. I expect that we will be fully capitalized within 2 to 3 weeks, 4 weeks max, but probably 2 to 3 weeks. There's a lot of demand for this opportunity. I would love for this elite group to play a major role in this. I had a chance to speak with many of you since the event. You are remarkable people, and it's my honor to be here. So, Brian, any questions you want to ask on behalf of the group?
I'm just trying to think if there's any outstanding ones. Quite a few people want the replay from this. I think I'm pretty much up to speed on it. So I'll open it up to everybody else that's here as well, as far as that, because you and I have talked intimately about it, so yeah. I understand what it is. Anybody else have any questions for Jared?
Just a quick question. If you did one of the 25K, is there an opportunity later to go up to 100K or whatever?
My expectation, this will be the only time we raise for the actual operating company. I'm doing it now for a reason, because if I wait any longer, the valuation is just going to be so significant, because then these companies are paying out distribution that we're gonna have to go after institutional money. And I don't want that. People care about people. I don't know if institutions do. Like Michael, you'll take a phone call from one of our founders. Goldman Sachs is not, right? And that's like the great example. So I don't believe we will raise again. I think this is going to be it for the operating company. If we do raise again, it'll be a significantly higher valuation. So all of you will be really happy. It's available until it's not. So what's happening, just for like full optics, this weekend in Salt Lake City is the NBA All-Star Game. And I was invited to come out on Saturday. There's this huge investor event. They have 400 investors, 60 billion assets under management at this event, and 600 million liquid. We sponsored it, and because they want me to speak on the stage. So we're probably going to get $15 to $20 million committed at this event, I'm sure. But I'm not going to say yes to everybody. It's just a commitment, and then we'll talk to each person. I care about people. That's what matters for me. So for Michael or for any of you, pick the number that feels right, but assume that there's not going to be another chance to invest in the holding company. You will have a chance to invest in individual portfolio companies, but make the decision based on what you're able to invest pretty immediately, because we expect this to fly. I'm happy for it to fly. I want to shift my focus to building the business versus fundraising. I shouldn't complain. I've been literally doing this for like 3 weeks. So most people fundraise for a long time, but I do know how to really grow this business. And that's just where I want to put my attention. So hope that answers your question.
Yep. Thank you.
And Michael and his wife pitched us today, Brian.
Yeah, you told me.
Pretty killer idea. So yeah.
I'm excited.
I was trying to place how I knew them. I'm like, where did I meet them? I couldn't figure it out. And then they told me at the end. So
I'm excited for this on multiple ends. And one of them is that as people come into the elite, this might actually be a platform that we use if somebody has a napkin idea. But the other thing is the ability to mentor, to see these companies before other people get to invest, and to say, wait a minute, I'm in the real estate space. I could actually help mentor them, potentially pick up, some additional points or just, just the ability to help somebody. So.
And cash, Brian, cash too. Like think of this. Though when early stage tech, the best time to help an early stage tech company is on the land grab. Mm-hmm. So like, for example, we have a platform in the dental industry, right? I use this example when we were in Miami. So let's pretend there's a dentist that's in elite. I'm just use that as an example. And they have relationships with leaders in dentistry because they're a dentist, or they just have relationships with leaders in dentistry. They hear about Canceled before anybody else in the world because you're part of our shareholder network. And you tell your friend who's a leader in dentistry about Canceled, and they say, oh, can you connect us with the founder? So you make the connection, right? Well, if something comes from that, we're paying you cash, or you can convert that cash into equity in Canceled. There's so many ways to monetize this opportunity, which is why I'm so fanatical about who's involved. Like, we just need good humans, like people that care about entrepreneurs is who needs to be part of this. And what I've told everybody that I've spoken with is if you love entrepreneurship the way that I know that you do, if you're part of Elite, and you really want to support that early stage entrepreneur, just to give them a little bit of an unfair advantage to win, then just at least take a spot. And most people, just in full transparency, are taking 2, 3, or 4 spots, but take whatever number of spots you can take, knowing that the capital call is like a week away, like 2 weeks away, just because that's just where it's going to happen quickly.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Anybody else have any more questions for Jared before we wrap up?
Hey, just a quick question. How is the what is it called? Trash mitter? How's that one doing? Because I actually know Jason.
Oh,
So
do you?
it's-
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's that's creating a category. So any company that creates a category, it takes a little longer to get going. It's already generating cash flow, which is good. And we're just trying to get Jason to focus in one market. He's focusing too wide. He has to focus in one market. So we're going to prove this out where he lives. Because whenever you launch a marketplace like that, like Uber as an example, they just proved out San Francisco. Like that's it. Jason's trying to prove out too many things. We're getting him to focus on one specific zip code, and then it's way easier to scale once you have a working model. But the platform itself is great, and it's a really great solution. We just got to focus on that one market.
Cool. Thank you.
Awesome.
you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm excited for just the sheer deal flow that comes through with this too.
It's gonna be awesome. So maybe what we should do, Brian, is I'll send you this deck.
Cool.
That'll be good for you, so you can share that. And then when you communicate, just have them email me. Even I'll tell you what to include in the email, so they can just tell me the amount they want. Because what we are doing at the documents is we want to know how many spots people want, because we pre-fill the documents, because we will not truly oversubscribe. Like I'm sure we'll oversubscribe verbally, but we will not literally oversubscribe. So this group just gets first crack. I love this group. So I'll share what you can share through email, so that you can get people to email me the number of spots they want. And then all the docs will get circulated very early next week, and we'll get it all finalized next week.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks.
Oh, hey, sorry,
No.
Jared. I did the QR code, and so I should expect an email, and then I just
Yeah,
tell them how many spots.
Yeah, just
and-
type in the number of spots. You can just type it back right now. Just type in however many spots you want.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. Awesome, everybody. Eric, don't do the QR code. You're driving, so.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Brian, appreciate you, buddy. I'll email you now so you got all the info, and excited to work with all of you.
We'll get this replay out too, because I guess a whole bunch of people wanted that. So
Awesome. Thanks. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
talk soon. See you, everybody. Be well.
Bye.